I'm going to keep this short and simple, and there's a lot of resources, but I'm just going to touch on some of the things that it would be good to think about as we move forward. It used to be back, in 2016 that MITRE was responsible for everything in the corpus, and they did all the work to do all keeping it clean and tidy. But now, as CNAs, we're responsible for doing the same thing. And it's easy to forget to some of the things that you should do to just keep things tidy. So here we go. Let's see if I can make the Teams thing work. There we go. We're going to talk about a few different topics. There's something called RBPs. And that's it stands for Reserved but Public, and I'll talk a little bit more about that and how you figure out what to do about them. And also, I was very impressed in a meeting with Megazone the other day. He said that he had cleaned up all his unused CVE IDs. Microsoft, we haven't done that, but there's a way to do it, and I'm now very inspired to do it, and I want to inspire all of you to do it. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about old CVEs, old meaning the CVEs that you as a CNA owned that are yours between about 2016 and current CVEs that have been upconverted from JSON 4 to JSON 5. And so I'll talk about that and then round it out with link rot. So RBPs they usually, I would guess, happen by mistake, but it's when you get a CVE from, whatever way you do, and you use that CVE in your system, and you publish an article about that CVE, about the vulnerability that you want to tell people how to protect themselves against, or, other information about the vulnerability that is in your scope, and you forget about filling out the corpus, the CVE corpus. So then MITRE has a series of scrapers, and people eyeball these things and they report it to the Secretariat, but it becomes known that you have published a CVE, but you haven't instantiated the corpus. That then becomes an RBP. And so ideally, in reality, I've seen the list of RBPs, and there's only less than 10 CNAs that even have double-digit RBPs. And so it's not a huge problem, but what I think is good for the program is if you're starting to automate your processes of publishing your CVEs in some way, then just stick into that automated, automated manual process of hitting publish on this and this and this, or if you have a publishing system that publishes 100 CVEs at a time, like we do, just put that extra pipeline of publishing the CVE to the corpus into your processes. So you do it basically at the same time. And then you won't have any more RBPs over time, and that's the best practice that you can have. There are sort of punishments that if you have too many RBPs, you may not be able to get new CVE IDs. In practice, that doesn't happen very often. There's very few CNAs that are in that situation. You'll know if you're one, but just in general, it's a best practice to publish your CVE to the corpus as soon as you possibly can after publishing your CVE publicly. Obviously, one of the requirements in the rules is that you have to publish, your own reference of the CVE in addition to publishing it on the CVE page. That publishing on the CVE.org is not good enough. You have to have another reference to it. And so just get in the good habit of doing them at the same time. So the Secretariat knows about a number of RBPs. I'll tell you, it's less than 1,000 that we know about. Is it less than 1,000 that exist? Probably not, because nobody can look through every web page in the entire World Wide Web and figure out if they reference a CVE. If you're really interested and really care to know if you have RBPs, that at least the Secretariat knows about, there is ways to figure that out. I asked one time last year, and they were kind enough to tell me that I had 33. Microsoft had 33, and I was kind of surprised. But yeah, there were things that happened along the time that I just forgot about it, and so I cleaned up most of them. I have to confess, I still have 3 RBPs, and I'm going to work on cleaning up those. But it's just something to keep in mind. Putting together your publishing to the corpus and publishing to your own website is the best practice. So let's move on to cleaning up CVEs that you might have asked for that you didn't use, and you go on to the next year and you have these old CVEs that you never used. CNAs do things differently. Some CNAs will use all their CVEs up into the next year. That's there's no rule about that. You can, if you have 5 2023 CVEs and you publish some things in January of 2024 because you already knew about them in 2023, that's fine. Well, what we do, just to keep it simpler, is if I've already assigned a CVE to a vulnerability in December and it somehow slips to January, I'll just replace it with a 2024 CVE. But if you have extra CVEs, I don't know, many of you probably heard the story this morning that we were calling IDR, and the CVEs were going into a black hole that we didn't know about, so we ended up calling IDR and getting a bunch of CVE IDs that I don't think we're going to use before the end of the year. And so there is a way. What the process is to go and reject those CVEs, and then they just they are no longer in the corpus. They're no longer reserved by a unknown CNA, but they are rejected by a CNA. And then people don't have to worry about them, and they just become, that's the way to clean them up, is to reject them. And there's a link right here on the slide that has detailed instructions on how to do that. And you can do me a favor, Dave, and just copy that link into the chat. That will help everybody.
Will do, thanks.
So yeah, that's another best practice, is to clean up your old unused CVEs by rejecting them. It's on my to-do list to do for ours because we have a lot. I'm not the best example of a CNA, sorry about that, guys, but I'm preaching to the choir. So let's talk about the CVEs in the corpus that were upconverted from JSON 4 to JSON 5. In some cases, this upconversion was sort of done. I mean, it had to be done just because, this is software, and you can't write an upconverter that's going to convert everything perfectly. It had to be done in a certain way that, yes, all the CVE, JSON 4 CVEs now exist in JSON 5. You can go back and look at them on CVE.org or in the JSON repository in GitHub, and you can kind of decide whether you like the way they did products or you don't like the way they do products. You can decide that maybe the upconversion, made your CVEs kind of ugly, especially in terms of products. I know the upconversion didn't do a favor to the old Windows CVEs, for example. And so if your data is in a database and you want to go through your old CVEs and replace the way they did some elements of the upconversion, for example, products, in a way that's better and more detailed and more useful, you can do that. The best practice is to not touch anything that was created before 2016, because all of those CVEs were created basically by MITRE, and they don't have as many problems as potentially the ones that we all started creating for ourselves after 2016. And so I think it might be October 2016. Is that right, Dave?
I'm going to grab that best practice link for you. I don't remember off the top of my head. Thanks.
I think it's October 2016 that, that you shouldn't touch the CVEs that were created before then, but everything after that, you can go and create. Another story that we heard this morning from Red Hat is they wanted to change all of their records in one fell swoop, and that kind of turned things over. So I wouldn't suggest doing that, because that didn't work. And also, it's not great if you take your descriptions that contain a lot of data and change them full, don't change the descriptions in a way that whitewashes them or removes information or that sort of stuff. Kind of leave the description field alone. I'd say the other elements in JSON 4, including products and other things that might be in there that got up converted badly, those are the ones that you want to clean up so that they look better on the website, on the CVE.org website. And again, I want to put a plug in for the CVE.test.org website, because you can take like say a month, 2021. You can say, I want to go for the January 2021 CVEs, and I want to experiment with taking those CVEs and making them look better. Then you can play with the JSON 5 and publish them to the test site and see how they look, because there's also a test website. And so, figure out how you want to do it, how you want to make them look. See how they do look on the test website in the testing space, and then go through the process of changing them on the real CVE.org corpus, and then you can take a look and see how they look there. Microsoft does things monthly, and so it's really easy for me to chunk things up into months and do it. I think we will probably replace most of the CVEs in the corpus. Going back this is 2023, we started using JSON 5 in 2023 in January. So I probably have replaced many of them in 2022, because we republish old CVEs. And I'll work my way back through time to kind of replace them, because primarily making changes to the product details that are in them. So anyway, my caution about this is they're your CVEs, they're your records, you own them, you can make them better, but don't be destructive. And do it thoughtfully so you're not going to break anything. And reach out for help and talk to others about what you want to do and get some good ideas about what you might do. Now, you don't have to do any of this, but that's totally up to you. So link rot, I have to say, is a favorite topic of our good friend Todd Beardsley, who couldn't make it today. He says that he's chasing kangaroos down in Australia today, so he's not here. So I'm sort of representing what he's thinking. He talks a lot about this in his CNA working group. And so those of you that attend that working group with Todd probably know a lot about this. But link rot is when the references on the CVE.org webpage don't work anymore. The links to to other things. And Todd went through in the summertime and figured out that, yeah, there's quite a few records in there that have links that don't work. And the problem for all us security folks is that what if somebody does something malicious with these links that don't work? And obviously you don't want that. So this is a problem that we're aware of and that we haven't solved yet. And we're trying to be creative, thinking about the best way to solve it. But the best practice moving forward is when you are putting your reference links, think about their resiliency. And if your company should become acquired by another company that's also a CNA, and you're going to merge your websites and make those kind of wholesale changes, think about going back to your CVE records and updating the links. I know in our CVEs, in our security update guide, we have now changed all the CVEs going back back to 2016 to point to CVE.org and not point to CVE.MITRE.org. So think about links both ways, both your links to CVE.MITRE.org, update those, and the links in your advisories, the links in your CVEs back to your advisories. If you should wholesale change those websites, think about redirects, think about changing the data in the corpus so that it points to the new site. So the problem with existing link rot we're working on, and somebody's going to come up with a great solution. We're going to figure it out. But as you move forward in time, think about ways that your own links, your own references that you put into CVE.org are going to be resilient. And so as much as possible, this problem is going to start to go away. That would be best. And since Todd's not here, and I shamelessly stole this last slide for him because it's the last slide that's going to be presented, and I like this slide. So Todd told me I could use it. So that's it. Is there any questions? I can't see any chat, but I'll see if I can find the right window.
We don't have any questions in chat, and nobody currently has their hand up. I did post in the links we were mentioning about how do you find your reserved CVE IDs, right? If I'm a CNA and I want to know how many reserved CVEs do I have, how do I do it? There's a link there in the chat for you. Record management guidance, that document we put out a few months ago, that link's there. And also how to use the test systems. And gosh, if you have any questions about that, the other CNAs are pretty expert. And so join the CNA CWG for discussion, or the Slack channel. Folks would be happy to help you play around and test before you break production.
Since Todd's not here, I'd also plug that if you're a CNA, especially if you're a new CNA, and you're looking for help getting started or using these tools or whatever, the CNA Coordination Working Group, which Todd is the chair of, is open to all CNAs to join and talk to other CNAs. And there is a mentor program run through that working group to get new CNAs with experienced CNAs to help answer your questions and mentor you to help get you started out. And so take advantage of that if you want to be a mentor or looking for a mentor.
That's excellent. And Lisa, your earlier point about RBPs, and it's so difficult to find all of them, right? If I'm a CNA and I reserve one or more CVE IDs, and then I talk about them in an advisory and I forget to publish, well, okay, anybody who visits my page and sees the advisory and then tries to go and look for the CVE record, they'll recognize there's an RBP. But what about if if maybe I'm an open source project or a smaller organization and we reserved an ID and in discussion with I don't know, some security groups, it ended up on some security list discussion, not even one of my advisories, but it's still out there in the public. That CVE ID is out there in the public being talked about, and I haven't published it yet. That's an RBP, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so as soon as that happens, we've got to be ready to publish. Um, Hopefully, information doesn't leak like that. But if it gets out there in the public, we got to be ready to publish right away. Now, maybe somebody who's in the rules update discussion can tell us, where are we with a proposed time limit? You know, what, as soon as something becomes public, how long does a CNA have now before they really have to publish? It's pretty short now, I think.
I remembered as 72 hours. Art, you're the one that knows.
I heard my name and the number of hours I recognize. So in the proposed, yeah.
Yeah, that's the hours you're allowed to bill for this.
The proposed, yeah, the proposed rule changes, and this gets into the first refusal sort of section. If something is out there in the public and the CNA with the most appropriate scope is silent for 72 hours, the timer has expired and other CNAs may get involved. Now, that's a little different question though. I'm going to take a note. I don't know if we have a if RBP, what's the timer on that? I'm not sure that's in there, so I'm going to write that one down. Thank you. 72 hours sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, happy to give you more work anytime.
No, that's it. Hey, we need to collect all the rules issues. So yeah, thanks.
Sure. Thanks.
All right.
And we've got some good recommendations for how to use the tools in the chat there. We love this, you know, best practices and tips for using tools are things we'd like to collect somewhere. So thank you for submitting.